or welcome back to my channel. So for this video, I'll be talking about all things social work because the month of March is Social Work Appreciation Month. So if you're thinking about becoming a social worker or you're really trying to figure out if this profession is for you, if you want to hear a little bit about my journey as a social worker, or if you're just thinking to yourself,
what do social workers do besides take people's kids away?
Lies, then just keep watching. Okay, so for this video, I'm going to get into some of the basics of social work because honestly, this could be a whole series in and of itself, but I'll just talk a little bit about like some surface level basic social worker facts. So basically, a social worker is someone who helps other people improve the quality of their life in some way. That's the easiest, most simple definition that I can give that I really feel like encompasses a lot of our job description. I want to give this disclaimer. Social workers, we do not fix people, we do not fix their lives, we do not fix their situations. I have to give that disclaimer because I feel like sometimes people hear social worker and they think, okay, well, they're about to raise my kids, they're going to fix my kids, or they're going to pay my bills, they're going to do all these things for me, and it's really an inaccurate assumption. We like to help people help themselves. We really want to empower our clients to really, take charge and be able to do things for themselves. We don't want to create some kind of unhealthy dependence. We don't want our clients to feel like they can't live without us. Because that makes the discharge process really difficult. You're not going to be with your clients throughout their whole life, not with one client their whole life. You want them to be able to take charge of their life and want to empower them to do things on their own. So I just want to make that disclaimer because I feel like people think, oh, the social worker's here, they're going to fix the situation, they're going to fix my life, and that's not the case. I'm going to help you help yourself. I'm going to give you resources. I'm going to counsel you. I'm going to coach you. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to assist you along the way. But really, it'll be you as my client that'll be doing most of the work because at the end of the day, it is your life. Okay, so how do you become a social worker? Let's talk a little bit about the education and the licensure. So most people go to a four-year university and they get a undergraduate degree in social work. The actual core classes for that is actually 2 years. And then people who don't do that, maybe they get a social work degree as a master's level. That is 2 years unless your undergraduate degree is social work. So for example, for me, I went to a four-year university and I majored in social work, so the core classes were 2 years. I graduated and then got my master's in social work also. But because my undergrad was already in social work, my graduate program, which usually takes 2 years, only took 1 year. So it's called the advanced standing track or the advanced track. And it's not that the information comes at you any faster. It's just that they've cut out one of the years because I think the second year of your undergraduate is the same as like the first year of the master's. And so you just be repeating that coursework, so they just cut it out. So it was 1 year, specifically it was like 3 semesters. I started in the summer, so it was summer, fall, and spring, and then I was done and I had my master's. As far as licensure, so this is something that differs from state to state. Right now, there is no national licensure. So in my situation, I got my master's in Ohio and I became a licensed social worker, so an LSW. I moved to Florida a couple of months ago and that license is not valid here. So some states have what they call like reciprocity where a license in one state can kind of count in different states, but Ohio and Florida, that not the case. So I'm a licensed social worker in Ohio. In Florida, I am not licensed. In Florida, it's called LCSW, Licensed Clinical Social Worker, versus in Ohio, there's an LSW, which I was, Licensed Social Worker, and then the next level in Ohio is LISW, which is Licensed Independent Social Worker. So the difference between, I guess the major difference between being a licensed social worker and an unlicensed social worker, the licensed social workers can do more like clinical work. So like assessing and diagnosing when it comes to like mental health. So in Ohio, I was a licensed social worker. I was assessing and diagnosing kids with mental health disorders. So down here in Florida, I'm a clinical social worker, not licensed yet. I still do clinical work. In Florida, they consider clinical work anything that's a master's level. So it really just depends on state to state. You have to kind of get online and look up some of the laws of your state. But there's no national licensure. I really wish there was, but it's just not how it happens. As far as getting the license, basically what you have to do is get supervision hours. So in the social work world, social workers meet with their supervisors often. It's really encouraged like weekly. Sometimes it's like once every 2 weeks. But you meet with a social worker who has a higher licensure than you, and you just kind of talk about different topics in social work. And you kind of talk about your cases, complex situations. You cover a whole bunch of different topics, like ethics, morals, whatever dilemmas come up in the social work world. And you do that, and you get a certain amount of hours. And after that, you take a clinical test, you pass the test, then you become, a licensed social worker. So as far as education and licensure, that's the gist of it. I think one of the biggest pros about the field of social work, and it's something that kind of helped me decide to be a social worker, was you can switch job titles and you can switch different populations that you work with without having to obtain another degree. So basically, social workers have a lot of different titles. A lot of people around you may be social workers and you don't know because they call themselves a therapist, like I was. So your therapist may be a social worker. They may have a social work degree. The person down at the office that's doing eligibility for food stamps could have a social work degree. The person down at, the courthouse lobbying for different rights might be a social worker. So we do a lot of different things, and I feel like unless you talk to the person, you ask them, like, what's your degree, you may not know that they are a social worker. We have this phrase in the social work world that says, from the womb to the tomb, basically meaning you can find a social worker on every different stage of life. Not the same person the whole way through life, but you can pretty much find a social worker to be involved in someone's life from the beginning all the way to the end. So let's say the beginning. Teen moms, working with, pregnant teenagers, that's working with the beginning of that child's life. Let's say all the way to the end. If you think of the end as like hospice, there's a hospice social worker, working with the family, helping them to adjust to this loss that's about to happen. The loved one passes away and the social worker is doing, grief counseling, or they're kind of doing groups and they're helping to create memories. And everywhere in between, for pretty much every different milestone in life or struggle, you'll pretty much be able to find a social worker. What I mean by different populations, so demographics, I just mean like different groups of people. So social workers can work with, there's like so many, I'm just going to list a few. So I mentioned like teen moms or teen dads, LGBTQ community, those involved in intimate partner violence, kids with like mental health, adults with mental health disorders, children with autism, the elderly, senior citizens, so many different populations, the homeless population, basically any grouping of people, social workers can be involved. Also, we can work in a lot of different places, schools, home visits, court, community centers, counseling centers, You can pretty much find a social worker anywhere. So that's the theme that I kind of keep talking about is we do a lot of different things. We work a lot of different places. We help a lot of different people. So that's what I like about social work. It's kind of a vague, it can be vague if, you know, someone just asks me really quick, like, what do you do? My response to that is, how much time you got? Like, it's easier to ask me what I don't do, basically. So that helped me, like I said, decide to be a social worker because I like the flexibility of it. I like that, you know, for 2 years I could work with teens at a school, and then if I get burnt out on that, because it is a high burnout profession, if I get burnt out on that, I can go to a nursing home and work with senior citizens and, you know, help them to age with dignity and age gracefully and work with, you know, their caregivers who are often their kids, helping them to adjust and what services the elderly need. And then if I'm done with that, then I can go work at a shelter with, you know, survivors of intimate partner violence. Like, I can just decide to move around and do different things without having to go back to school, without having to get another license. I can just keep it moving. Now, most social workers, I didn't point this out when I was talking about the education, but most social workers either get a bachelor or a master's. You can get your doctorate or PhD. It doesn't really change or open up, I guess, more opportunities. People who get their PhD or DSW, that's a doctorate in social work, is for like research purposes. If you want to be, you know, do research, or if you want to be like a college professor or, you know, teach social work, then that's pretty much what you can do with that degree. But I mean, you can do those things without it. Really, the way to advance in the social work world is from licensure. You know, you can have a bachelor's and a master's, depending on the state. Again, you gotta have to check those laws for that state, for each state. But licensure is really how you advance in the social work world, to where you can kind of do like independent or private practice if you get like a, you know, an independent licensure. So, but like I said, we do a lot of different things, work with a lot of different people, and that's why I like being a social worker. If you are a social worker, let me take this time to say thank you for all the work that you do. If you never hear it, because, you know, sometimes we go months and months and months without hearing it. So if no one has told you thank you, I want to say thank you. I'm sure your clients and the places that you work really appreciate what you do. I know firsthand just how tiring and frustrating the field can be. I know we don't always get cooperation from our families, and our families meaning our clients. Our clients and their families, we don't always get collaboration and cooperation. It's long hours, and there's not enough time, there's not enough resources. There's this expectation that, okay, the social worker's here and they can fix this situation that has existed way before you got there, and that you can just perform a miracle. Life is complicated. People's lives are complicated. When life happens to a person and the social worker has to come in and help them kind of rebuild their lives, it takes time, it takes effort. But remember, you can't want your client to win more than they do. Burnout is high in this field. Make sure you take care of yourself. But I always say, like, I'm not going to work harder than you, is what I say to my clients. Like, it's their life. You know, I'm just here to assist you. Of course, I want you to win. We all want our clients to win, but we can't want it more than they do. But yes, but going back to just say thank you for choosing this profession. I know that all of your clients and their families and the agencies are really grateful for what you do. Remember that you are appreciated, much like education with teachers. It's a thankless job. We know what we do is important, and I feel like the rest of the world is just taking a little while to figure that out. But they're getting there, and I think one day everyone will look back and be like, oh, that was social work? That was social work all this time. Or like, where were the social workers? Like, our day is coming. As the world gets more and more complicated, I feel like everyone will see more the need for more social workers. So, thank you. If you are thinking about becoming a social worker, rewind to the part of the video where you hear me encouraging the people who are currently social workers and listen to the words that I'm saying. Make sure that you take care of yourself and do some of the personal work now. Kind of unpack as much baggage as you can so that you're not as easily triggered in this high burnout field, because the expectation will be during a crisis or when you walk into someone's life and you know their world has fallen apart, the expectation will be that you will be the calm to their storm. So make sure that you just do a lot of the personal work, unpack some of your baggage so that you're not so easily triggered. Don't get so caught up into what people are saying, specifically that you'll never make any money. There is work to be There is definitely work. There is money to be made in this field. I feel like just with any profession, when it gets to the beginning of your career, like anything, you'll have to work from the bottom. You have to start from the bottom and work your way up. But there is money to be had and to be made in this field. Let me tell you that. As tiring as it is, it's as equally, if not more, fulfilling. I feel like one of the best things you can give to people is hope. And that is what we do. We are in the business of bringing hope to people, and giving them a better, quality for their life. I feel like there's no better job than to be, deliverers of hope. And that's what we do in this field. All right, now I'm going to end the video with giving you just a little blurb about my journey as a social worker. So like I said at the beginning of the video, I got my bachelor's from a four-year university in Florida. After that, I moved to Ohio and I got my master's there. I became a licensed social worker. My first social work job was I was a caseworker for children with severe mental illnesses. I was doing home visits. I was going to court with them. I was observing them in school. I was working with their families, basically providing like behavioral interventions to kind of help them cope with the symptoms of their mental illness. There was some family meetings that were being had, a lot of collaboration with different people in the community, police officers, people in hospitals if they were, living on a unit for, whatever reason. So that was my first kind of introduction into the social work world after school. After that, I became, I'm just going to call it a behavior coach. It's called a therapeutic intervention specialist, basically. But I worked at a middle school and a high school. It was in one, so it was grades 6 through 12. And so I was basically a behavioral coach. I would talk to kids about different behaviors they had that were impeding their learning process. Some or most majority of them had some kind of like mental health disorder, so like anxiety, depression. Was also doing risk assessments, which you all probably will know if I say suicide assessments, suicide risk assessments. Talk to the kids, see how much of at risk they were for harming themselves or committing suicide, and then sending them to the hospitals for further evaluation and intervention. And then after that, I became a therapist. So with the same agency, but I kind of just moved from the schools to the office and did office-based therapy, clients between the ages of like 3 and like 18. So that was in Ohio, and then I moved to Florida, and now I'm a clinical social worker at a hospital, basically doing safe discharge planning. So patients come into the hospital, can they return to their regular life? If they can't, then it's my job and the rest of the social workers' jobs to figure out how they can go home safely. So do you need a home nurse? I need to set that up. Do you need to go to a rehab facility? Do you need physical therapy at home? Or, just what different needs do you have? So now I'm doing hospital social work, which is totally different from my children and families background, but I feel like it's making me a more well-rounded social worker. So as difficult and as frustrating as it can be, I am grateful for the experience that I'm currently having at this level 2 trauma hospital. So yeah, it's been interesting, but like I said, it's making me a more well-rounded social worker. All right, everyone, that is it for another video. Thank you so much for watching and coming back and seeing me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you know a social worker, thank them for all they do. Wish them a happy Social Work Appreciation Month. And I'll see you next week with another video.